seed, pay taxes on the harvest. I want to pay taxes on the seed. The government wants to pay taxes on the harvest. And you'll be paying taxes at a tax rate that you don't even know what's going to be.
Right.
We got a $39 trillion deficit right now. And the Congressional Budget Office report said last year that we raise taxes by 50% by year 2030. We can't even pay the interest on the debt. The country will go bankrupt.
Welcome to Investing for Generational Wealth. I'm John Lai from Clive Capital, where we help high earners just like you invest outside of the stock market to passively achieve long-term wealth generation through superior risk-adjusted returns, long-term passive income and cash flow, and tax benefits. Together with you, we're investing in over 1,100 multifamily apartments under renovations, nearly 100 single-family rental homes under development, more than 14 industrial warehouses, over 700,000 of personal loans, and nearly 56 oil and gas wells. And we've expanded to other asset classes with the end goal of helping you, our investors, create diversified, balanced portfolios. Before we begin, as always, a quick disclaimer. We're not financial advisors. All investments are subject to risks, including the possible loss of the money you invest. So perform your due diligence before making any financial decisions. And of course, consult your CPA and your attorney before beginning investments. I'm your host, John Lai, and welcome to today's episode, The Tax-Free Retirement Blueprint, the Wealth Strategies Hidden in Plain Sight with Alan Porter. Alan's a certified tax and business advisor, featured in over 1,100 publications, and best-selling author of Tax-Free Retirement Solution. He's spoken at Harvard, at West Point, and appeared on ESPN, Fox, ABC, and CBS. Alan leads a powerhouse team of CPAs and tax attorneys, financial professionals, dedicated to delivering tax-free retirement strategies and bulletproof financial planning. Alan, I don't know how many tax strategists end up on ESPN, but we're absolutely going to circle back on that later on. First, though, for those who don't know and are new to your world, could you take a few minutes to walk us through your background?
Absolutely. I never thought I'd ever be doing this. I retired from the military in 1993. I was a Black Hawk instructor pilot. I loved what I did. I loved serving my country, and I had a passion for what I did. And when I was there, I read one manual because I was a Black instructor pilot for Blackhawks, OH-58s, and Huey. And I basically read one manual all the time. But just like the Black Hawk, I knew every stability augmentation system, flight path stabilization system, limitations, immersion procedures. And I had plenty of mercies, but I always knew what was going on the helicopter, able to get that helicopter down without loss of life or loss of equipment. And I create the same passion for what I do now with teaching people to think outside the box of conventional financial planning and show them the strategies that the wealthy and the banking institutions have been using for years to acquire their wealth and to save taxes. But I had a successful real estate mortgage business up until 2008. And I've had some tragic things happen like that. And this is why I have the passion that I do. I live in Fayetteville, North Carolina, just outside of Fort Bragg, where I'm retired from. And my son lived in Little Rock, Arkansas. He was married. His wife, Lynn, she was 39. They had two little girls. They were 7 and 4, my granddaughters. We went down there for Christmas in 2009, but my son had been 100% disabled for over 3 years and still not getting a disability. Hired an attorney, finally got a disability in the summer of 2010. But January 5th, John, 2010 changed my entire life. I got a phone call from his wife. She said, Alan, I've been diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. They've given me 6 months to live. Of course, they're all devastated. But there's a huge financial problem with my son because he had not gotten any money. And his disability didn't start until summer of 2010. And I'm helping him out, but I don't know for how long until I have to sell the house and do whatever to get the families together. But there's no money coming in whatsoever. But she happened to have a terminal illness rider, her life insurance policy. Now, I feel like 99% of the people out there, John, that thought life insurance was a death product that you had to die to benefit from. Man, am I wrong. I've learned so much. But she had a terminal illness rider on her life insurance policy that let her access the death benefit, which was in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, completely tax-free, which I knew nothing about. And if it had not been for that, my son would be bankrupt. And it took a huge financial strain off of me. To make a long story short, she died a year later. So I moved my son back to North Carolina. They lived behind me in the house. And those girls right now, the 7-year-old now just graduated last year from UNC, Chapel Hill. This year, this last summer, she got her EMT license and saved her first client. Commercial pilot had a heart attack or something, but he'd been dead for basically 10 minutes. She brought him back to life.
Wow.
And next week, she's in the ambulance and going to a call. She's not driving, she's in the passenger side. They go off through an intersection. This truck comes there at T-bones and going about 45 or 50 miles an hour,
Wow.
rolls the ambulance, but she's all right. The guy in the back kind of hurt pretty bad. But she's going to med school this fall, become a doctor. And I'm very proud of her. My other granddaughter is in Appalachian State right now. But I also have another daughter. And she had given, about a year after that, she'd given birth to my third grandson. And she was diagnosed with breast cancer. And we didn't think she was going to live. She's over 14 years cancer-free now, I believe.
That's great.
But in 2023, she contacted Graves' disease and thyroid eye condition. And John, there's no cure for thyroid eye condition. They have an infusion of this drug called Perpeza. There's 8 infusions. The first one was $32,000. The last one was in May of 23. It was almost $250,000.
Wow. The
problem is the thyroid eye condition came back in January of 2024. She went to the doctor in February. The doctor says, Nicole, I'm sorry, there's nothing we can do until you go blind and then we can operate. Thinking, what a prognosis. So we tried to get her a study at Duke. She didn't qualify because she'd taken the Tripeza. We did get her to the Mayo Clinic in Rochester for about 4 days of consulting and testing. But basically, there's nothing they can do anything. Do either. They've got an experimental drug that's not covered by insurance. It's not even for the thyroid eye condition. And it's over $500,000. And it may be 50% effective. They don't even know. So right now, my daughter is living day to day, slowly going blind, and we're just praying something can be done for her. But that's the reason that I have what I do today, because I started studying insurance products and what they do for people. I tell people, I said, you always hear about insurance. I don't need any insurance. Everybody needs insurance, John, because it protects them. And I tell people, I said, what if I could show you a financial product that can be a tax deduction if properly structured? It grows tax deferred, just like your 401k. It does not affect the taxation of Social Security or the means testing for Medicare Part B. There's only 2 vehicles that I know of that, and that's your Roth products and your 401k, Roth IRA. But also, you will not have to pay IRMA taxes. That alone is tens of thousands of dollars every year for people that they're not aware of. You can become your own bank, borrowing from yourself, paying yourself back, compound interest for you, and not the financial institution. John, I've been doing this for a decade and a half. I have never gone to the bank in a decade and a half of money because I'm borrowing from myself. Now think about this. Have you ever heard of effective interest cost?
I may have heard of it, but I don't know much about it. Yeah.
I had a gentleman, he retired from the Army, he was 42, and he wanted to do my tax-free retirement system. And I asked him, I said, how much debt do you have? He said, we bought a new house a couple of months ago. I got a couple of car payments, a loan, and a credit card. I said, okay, fill this out. Back with me next week. We'll do a Zoom conference. Comes on the phone, on the Zoom conference. I said, you've got $461,000 in debt. That's not your problem. He said, what is, Alan? I said, you told me you had a 2.75% interest rate on your mortgage, which is good. But I said, do you realize your effective interest cost of that mortgage is 49.76%? He said, Alan, how is that possible? I said, because it's not going to get down to the 2.75 until the last couple of months of the mortgage. I said, you've got a credit card here that's over 90% effective interest cost. And even though you've got great credit, your average effective interest cost is over 46%. I said, what financial vehicle are you investing in? And your 401k or anything else gives you a 46% return on your money, because 46 cents of every dollar that you pay out goes to compound interest for some financial institution. That money's gone for you forever. He said, I'm definitely not my 401k because I lost 10% in that last year. I said, you're putting $1,000 a month into that, aren't you? He said, yeah. I said, I'll tell you what, how long is it going to take you to pay your debts off the way you're doing it right now? I said, 20-some years, going to pay an extra on the mortgage, which a lot of people do, John. So I said, I'll tell you what, you'll take that $1,000 a month for 10 years. It's a 10-year policy. And we're going to put it into an interest, a tax-free bucket of money in a whole life insurance policy. And we're going to pay your debts off 14.17 years faster. We're going to save you over $73,000 in interest. And at the end of 10 years, there'll be over $130,000 in a tax-free bucket of money that you become your own bank. I'll show you how to do this. You'll never have to borrow money from the bank to do renovations, take a vacation, pay for your college education. And your debt benefit at that time is over $400,000 of tax-free money in case something should happen to you to protect your family. Now, I want you to understand this. Now he's 52 years of age. I said, you don't have to put any more money into this whole life insurance policy. We can start using an index universal life insurance policy to the gains in the stock market. Not all the gains, but we have a zero floor. But I thought, think about this. You don't have to put any more money into this whole life policy. I've showed you how to become your own. And by the time you're 65, there'll be over $250,000 in a tax-free bucket of money that you can use as policy loans. You'll never have to pay them back to supplement your retirement. That does not affect the taxation of Social Security, means test, Medicare Part B, IRMA taxes. You're protected from lawsuits, liens, and judgments. You avoid probate. You eliminate or mitigate the risk in retirement, such as, have you ever heard of sequence return risk, John?
I have.
You're one of the very few, but you eliminate sequence return risk. You eliminate the number one fear of retirement, running out of money before you run out of life. You eliminate market risk. You eliminate tax risk. You eliminate longevity risk, which is a risk multiplier. And it also helps you mitigate or eliminate long-term care costs, because people are not prepared for long-term care. I have clients all the time, oh, I'm never going to need long-term care. 70% of all Americans will need long-term care at some point in their life. 40% of Americans on long-term care right now, John, are between the age of 18 and 64.
Oh, wow.
And this is an age lab study by Dr. Korsky at MIT University. If you're married at age 65, there is a 75% chance of you or your spouse contacting Alzheimer's, dementia, or Parkinson's. And I know this for a fact. I'm 73. My brother had to put him in a nursing home a couple of years ago, and now he's in hospice. I don't think it's going to last the summer, but he's got Alzheimer's. The state patrol called his daughter up, said, you need to pick your father up. He doesn't know what he's doing. We caught him going down the interstate in the wrong direction. He has no idea what he's doing. It's a very sad disease. They're all sad diseases, but they will destroy people's retirement. I'll give you a couple cases in point. We've got a couple, they're 67 years of age. They got $5 million in assets. They're getting ready to go on a big vacation into Europe. They have a 42-year-old son. That's not my client. It's another person's client. But he has 4 kids. His wife does not work. He died in his driveway washing his car of a heart attack. He had no insurance. Who do you think is going to be taking care of those kids?
The wife and
Mom and dad.
Yeah.
And I got another one. They're in their 70s, early 70s, just retired, very well off, over, I think, $10 million or something like that. But they're planning a big trip, I think a round the world cruise or something like that. But about 3 months, she started getting dementia. And now everything has changed. And long-term care right now costs between $50,000 to $200,000 a year and goes up by 6% every year. I can mitigate or eliminate that cost, because here's what's really bad. The caregiver is what's the person that's really going to suffer the most, because they're going to give them the care, but the person that's sick, usually with Alzheimer's, dementia, or whatever, actually down the road, they don't know what's going on anyway. But the caregiver, I don't care if you got $2 million in assets, the government's going to, it's called Medicaid spend down. Okay. They're going to confiscate your assets to pay for the person's long-term care, because Medicare does not cover long-term care. Medicaid does. And you'll be left with one house, one car, approximately $137,000 in cash, and a small subsistence allowance out of $2 million. People aren't prepared for it because they don't know.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's the greatest wealth transfer vehicle available today, bar. I've got multi-millionaire clients that have hundreds of millions of dollars in life insurance. They don't need the life insurance, but they need a tax-free vehicle to pay the taxes on their estate, such as, you remember Joe Robbie, he owned Joe Robbie Stadium in the Miami Dolphins?
Yes.
Okay. Him and Princeton Entertainer, the same way. They had no exit plan, no will or trust to set up when they passed away. What the Robbie family did, probably got very little of that $400 million because everything went to pay the tax on the estate. They sold the team, sold the stadium. It's like Prince Entertainment. This family may get 20-25% of that estate because of no prior planning. And what's really bad about this, attorneys get 6 to 12% of that estate through legal fees. And the longer it goes on, the more money they're going to make. And it's just, I'm sure you've heard of probate. I've got a definition for it. It's a lawsuit that's issued by you that you're going to pay for and you're going to lose. Because if you have a set up structure, everything set up properly, you don't have to worry about probate. And that's one of the reasons people need to have trust, because wills get put in probate all the time. And it's become public knowledge. And so anybody can contest a will. But
I did have one quick question in terms of whole life policies. They get such a bad reputation among mainstream financial advisors. Is that criticism fair? It doesn't sound like it. What do they not know, or what's their perception, and how do you amend that perception?
a lot of EC-based advisors, first off, aren't educated in cash value life insurance. And it's just like sequence returns risk. I've got hundreds of clients that have millions of dollars in a stock portfolio, and none of their advisors, they're supposed to be fiduciaries, have never told them about sequence returns. And when I tell them, I said, why do you think they've never told you about sequence return risk? They get paid a fee whether I make money or not. I said, exactly right. Now there's great advisors out there, but is he looking out for you, or is he looking out for himself and his company? I'm a certified financial. Like you said, I'm a certified tax and business advisor. I think I'm only one of 250 people in the United States that have both those designations. But I'm very passionate about what I do with people. And I'm not against the stock portfolio at all. Okay, don't get me wrong there. I think everybody needs to have diversified assets. But when I talk to clients, they say, I'm diversified. No, you're not diversified. You have all your money in stocks. You're not diversified at all. You need to have guaranteed income. You need to have insurance for all kinds of things. You need to have structured income. It's not the biggest thing I tell people, John, especially in retirement. It's not about return on investment. It's about distribution of your assets. And I said, how would you like to get a distribution of your assets for using a smaller portion of your money? They said, what do you mean, Al? I said, let's take $1 million, okay, in your stock portfolio or 401k or anything like that at age 65. And they used to say, they still say it, the 4% distribution rate is a safe distribution rate to last for 30 years, indexed for inflation at 3%. First off, that $40,000 is not guaranteed, okay? Now, it could be more, could be less, but it's not guaranteed. It's only for 30 years. All my retirement plans go to age 120 or until end of life. But if you take that $1 million in that stock portfolio, you just take $650,000 approximately and put it into a properly structured fixed indexed annuity, okay? You're going to get a $40,000 guaranteed income for the rest of your life. And then on top of that, now you're guaranteed by contract never to have a loss due to a market downturn, because we're not tied to the market. We use indexing strategies to grow our cash value and our life insurance and our fixed indexed annuities. You're going to get, whenever that indexing strategy goes up, you're going to get an increase in income, and that's locked in. And you can put your spouse on this. It's 0.5% less because the insurance company's insuring two lives. But as an example, think about this. If that accumulation value runs out, and say when you're 82 or something like that, because the contractual guarantee, the insurance company still has to pay you to age 120 until end of life. Now, if you lose all your money in the stock portfolio, nobody's going to pay you anything because there's no contract guarantees. And the other thing, if you lose 2 of the 6 activities of daily living, like being able to dress yourself, wash yourself, things like that, your income will be doubled for 5 years with the increase in income. And after the 5 years, if you're still alive, it goes back to what it was before, but with all the increases. There's no other financial vehicle can do. That's guaranteed income that you can't outlive. You can't do that with mutual funds. You can't do that with a stock portfolio because there's nothing guaranteed. Now, like I said, I'm not against the stock portfolio, but there's other means out there, and people need to be educated on everything out there.
That increase in income, does that accommodate inflation? So like the 40,000 is guaranteed a year, but obviously there's going to be inflation year over year. Does that accommodate that increase in income accommodate the inflation on an annual basis?
Oh, sometimes it counts 2 to 3 times as much as the inflation. But think about this too. That leaves you $350,000 to do with what you want. You can pay taxes on it and make it a Roth. Now you have no required minimum distribution. You have no taxes on Social Security, the means testing, Medicare Part B. Again, you eliminate or mitigate many of the risk in retirement. It's not about the financial, well, it is about the financial asset, but it's the way things are structured. It's structured for tax purposes. Because I don't care how much money you make, it's how much money you have after taxes.
Yeah, that makes sense. Can you walk us through the anatomy of whole life policy? What are the core components? I understand there's death benefit, cash value, dividends, premium. How do those interrelate?
What do you mean? It can be a tax deduction when first set of property in a cash balance plan. But again, it's tax deductible, just like your 401k. Tax-free distributions does not affect the taxation of Social Security or excess Medicare Part B. That can be used as collateral in any lending institution in the United States. Do you realize that banks, you go to FDIC.gov and you get this on that website, you can bring up any major bank in the United States and the assets. You'll have cash value life insurance as one of their top tier one assets. It's more than twice as much as real estate and many more times as much as stock. And people don't know this, but obviously banks think it's called BOLI, bank-owned life insurance. Corporations do the same thing. It's called COLI, corporation-owned life insurance. And I tell people, I said, if these financial people here, these banks, supposed to be the greatest financial minds in the world, if they think cash value life insurance is good enough for the banks and corporations, don't you think you ought to have it as part of your portfolio? And they all say yes. The thing is, it's like, talk to people, John, it's a lot of them tell me, Alan, I have my CPA, my financial advisor, my attorney, give me all my tax and business advice or tax and financial advice. I said, first off, I'm not here to replace anybody's advisor, but I want to work with them as a team to give you the best possible financial scenario. And what you do with this, with whatever I say, that's your decision. It's not my decision. It's not their decision. That's your decision. I said, but I have 2 questions for you. I said, when is the last time any of them give you any proactive advice on saving taxes? It's slim to never. Your CPA wants the proper numbers for the tax return. Your financial planner is looking for the best financial vehicle, the greatest returns. And your attorney is worried about litigation and forms and stuff like that. And I said, I got one more question for you. You may have the greatest advisors in the world, but it's what they don't know that's going to end up costing you hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars, in undue taxes, fees, and lost opportunity costs. And they all agree, John, but they say, Alan, what do you mean by lost opportunity costs? I said, what if I could do a tax strategy for you that will save you enough money that I can create a tax-free retirement for you that's going to be worth hundreds of thousands, if not tens of millions of dollars, that will be generational income. On a tax strategy I did for you, that money was gone to Uncle Sam, but now we're returning that money and put it to these financial products. It makes a huge difference. I'll give you a perfect example. One of my clients, last year, we did a tax strategy for him. He's getting back $2,280,000 taxes he paid over the last 3 years. We're also paying the taxes on $1.4 million in multi plans. And over the time period, he's going to have tens of millions of dollars of tax-free money. That'll be generational income, not just for a beneficiary. This is generational income it's a legacy plan. That's what it is. And people don't know about this, and they should. People don't know about any of this. And when I talked to this guy, he said, why don't people know about this? I said, it ought to be taught in high school, but it's not. He's a doctor. He didn't have any idea of any of this because they don't teach doctors financial classes, as far as I know. They do what they do.
Right.
But people need to know this. Oh, I've got college professors with PhD degrees in accounting and finance. They have no idea what I'm talking about. They ask me to teach their classes sometimes, which I do. But it's not rocket science. Like I said, it ought to be taught in high school. But I've become very passionate about doing this because what my team does, what I mean by the team, I have a team of specialists. And what I mean by specialists, John, let's say I'm your family doctor. I can treat you for minor illnesses, minor injuries. But if you want your knee operated on, you are an orthopedic surgeon, correct? That's what I have in my team. Tax-specific attorneys, CPAs, and other specialists on my team. What we do is we collaborate to come up with solutions for people's financial problems. What we do is we show people how to reduce, possibly eliminate both debt and taxes, possibly set you up with a tax-free retirement, eliminate or mitigate all the risk in retirement that many other financial vehicles only compound. When we go through tax planning, tax strategies, estate planning, charitable gifting, you realize that you can give a gift to a charity today that they don't get that gift until you pass away, but you get a tax deduction for it today. One of my first death cases was a oral surgeon in Texas. And when we had a conversation, I asked him, what's your biggest expense? He was a referral. And he said, my practice, I said, no, your biggest expense is taxes. He said, you're absolutely right. He said, I got to pay $360,000 in taxes this year. I said, well, I'm going to confirm my team. We'll get back next week. So we did. I said, how would you like to have a tax deduction of $250,000 this year, the next 10 years, and $350,000 for the following 10 years? He said, Alan, that's great. I want to do that. But how do you do that? It's not how I do it. It's who I know that knows how to do it. And they're part of my team. But basically what we did, we said, well, with a plan, that's a donor advised fund, which is a charity of his choice. And he's going to donate units of fund to the charity. Since he's donating units, not the financial money per se, he's only going to get an 80% tax deduction. So 80% of the 250 is $200,000. At a 4% tax bracket, that's $80,000. So that he got $80,000 and got $4 million policy out of him and $4 million policy on his wife. And in the meantime, they had a baby. And I kept after him. You have to put some contingent beneficiaries on here, whether it's your parents, whoever, but you need to have, and this is for everybody right here, John. I don't care if you make $40,000 a year, but you have to have insurance to protect your family. And you got to have planning because, okay, you've got 3 kids and the oldest one is 14, babysitting the other 2 that are 10 and 8. You and your wife go out for dinner. You're killed in a car wreck. Who's going to take care of those people, those babies, those children? You got to have a plan for all this stuff.
Right.
Do it now before it's too late. But it's just like everything else I've talked about. You've got to have a plan. If you don't have a plan, create a plan. If you do have a plan, you need to improve on it every year. I'll give you a perfect example. Again, not my client. This man got divorced from his wife over 25 years ago. Okay. He was working at a company. His 401k, she was the beneficiary. For 25 years, she was the beneficiary. His new wife went to him for 25 years and he died. Guess who got the money? His ex-wife.
Right.
Think about that.
Yeah.
It's all planning. But going back to the fixed index annuities, but the cash value life insurance, whether it's whole life or index universal life, I've got 8 of these policies. I've got 5 index universal life policies for my retirement. I could have started taking over $100,000 a year 3 years ago. I don't need the money. It's going to continue to grow. My legacy is going to continue to grow because the death benefit continues to grow. I have that to pay for my long-term care. Thank God, if I need it. Thank God I'll never have to use that for me and my wife. But hopefully it's going to be a legacy of our family. But then I've got 3 whole life policies for my granddaughter's college education because it's the greatest college funding vehicle available today, bar none. It beats the 529 plan. All the piece. First off, the government controls the 529 plan. You can only save so much in it. If you don't use it for higher education, it's a 10% penalty plus all the tax. So there's many things out there that people don't understand that I was going to put this money in a 401k, I'm do this and this. And just like this doctor, getting back to that doctor, had $4 million on him, $4 million on his wife. I got a call from his office. He was murdered.
Oh, no.
And he was murdered by his wife. And that little baby was left alone. Of course, his parents came in and took control. But the thing is, now they've got to account for every dollar they spend on that baby. There needs to be proper paperwork taken care of to make it easier for the people that are left back. It's just, I've got clients that are still looking for the 401ks. They don't know where the 401ks are, their IRAs. People need this. I call it a peace of mind checklist. I think this is one of the greatest pieces of paper I've ever, you can get them online anyway. But basically what it is, you give it to your loved one, your trustee or whoever. If I pass away, this is all of my accounts. Here are the passwords. This is where you go. There's the phone numbers, everything. Because when somebody passes away and they've got bank accounts and all this other stuff, it gets sometimes in the probate.
Right.
And you got to have a plan for this stuff. But I call a peace of mind checklist, because all my wife has to do is go open this file right there. There's all our financials, everything, insurance policies, everything. But when this stuff happened to my family, all the problems with the illnesses, it changed me. Because I want to educate people on what's out there, because they don't know. They just have not been told about any of this. And it's like the tax strategies. I just got a podcast here just before we got on with you on a gentleman I met down to Mexico on a business trip. And he's now part of my team because he does tax strategies, charitable contribution, anywhere from 5 to 1 to 6 to 1. As an example, you put in $50,000, you get a tax deduction of $250,000. Now, think about it. There's all kinds of things through recouping past taxes. We got Section 179 leasing program. We've got tiny house or box house programs. Anywhere from 5 to 1 or 1 to 5 to 1 to 10 tax deduction. You put $100,000 in, you get $1 million tax deduction. Now, how do you do it? It's not how I do it. It's who I know. It's part of my team that knows how to do this. And there's just all kinds of things that we can do with this. Getting back to life insurance, it's a legacy. You can provide a tax-free legacy for your family. And like I said, it's the greatest wealth transfer vehicle available. You always hear Susie Orman and Dave Ramsey say insurance is not a good investment. First off, it's embarrassment to call insurance an investment, because it's not an investment. It's an asset class all on its own. There's no other financial product that ever paid dividends during the Great Depression except cash value life insurance. And like I said, I agree with what they say, about 50% of what they say, but when it comes to retirement, they're out in left field as far as I'm concerned. And with educated advisors too, they feel the same way as I do. But there's so many things out there, John, that people don't understand, and they need to understand, because what it will do, first off, it's going to calm their fear. Because the number one fear of retirement is running out of money before you run out of life. We can eliminate that. But there's all kinds of things I can go into, John. But another question?
Yeah. So most of our audience is primarily like working professionals. They're W-2. They don't own a business. They have a 401k, traditional IRAs or Roth IRAs, and they invest in the public markets. Now, they think that's probably enough. They might have a term life insurance policy, and then they think that investing the rest is sufficient. What do you say to those folks? And then how do you position, given their profile and their portfolio, how do you integrate some of the things that your team is working on into that mix?
Perfect question. First off, I asked people why they contribute to a 401k. They show some tax deduction. I said, no, it's the tax compound. I said, would you rather pay taxes on the seed, pay taxes on the harvest? I want to pay taxes on the seed. The government wants to pay taxes on the harvest. And you'll be paying taxes at a tax rate that you don't even know what's going to be.
Right.
We got a $39 trillion deficit right now. And the Congressional Budget Office report said last year that we raise taxes by 50% by year 2030. We can't even pay the interest on the debt. The country will go bankrupt. Not only that, we have over $217 trillion of unfunded liabilities in the future from Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. People aren't prepared for this. And Washington, all they want to do is spend money. And like right now in New York, this guy, okay, everything's free. Well, who's going to pay for it? That's why people are leaving New York, and the wealthy people are leaving in droves. But it's another thing. It's like people ask me, I do rebuttals to people all the time with companies. And they had this wealth management firm in California. They sent me out a survey, and I said, clicked on, I like annuities. And he said, "Why do you like annuities?" I said, "I like fixed indexed annuities. I don't deal in variable annuities because they're tied to the market and their fees are over 4%. But here's the thing. The guy asked me, he says, "Alan, I said, why do you like annuities?" I said, "Because it's guaranteed income." He said, "If that insurance company loses all its money, you've lost everything." I mean, I said, "Obviously, you don't know how insurance companies are built. First off, the state regulates it, and a certain portion of your premium goes to a tax that's put into a pool of money." Now, I know of no insurance companies gone under because they were taken over by other insurance companies. But I know of over 500 banks and thousands of corporations that have gone bankrupt in the last decade because of over leverage. And I confirmed this with a banker from Truist Bank. I was on the plane with her, and I showed her my book, Tax-Free Retirement System, and not Tax-Free Retirement Solutions, but Wealth Beyond Power and my Tax-Free Retirement book. And she said, that my financial advisor, I've been with her 30 years, she's never told me any of this stuff. It's a really short read. I said, "Let me ask you a question. How much money does a bank have to loan out $100 million?" She said, "I think about $12 million." I said, "See, that's where the problem is. You're over leveraged. How many millions of dollars could be bad loans of that 100 million?" I said, "In order for an insurance company to write a $100,000 policy on you, John, they have to have $100,000 in their general account plus 8% surplus. My companies only, they all have over 100% surplus. And let's say here in North Carolina that State Farm writes 10% of all the policies in North Carolina. And then some company like whatever comes in and goes bankrupt in 3 years. First off, that big pool of money that's allocated by the state from the taxes, from the tax from the premium, that goes to pay off that liability. If there's any liability left over, since State Farm sells 10% of those policies in North Carolina, they have to pay 10% of what's ever left. They can't sell insurance in North Carolina. So insurance companies look out for each other. And that's one of the great things about insurance companies because they've been around for hundreds of years. Just annuities. They've been around for hundreds of years. But I think insurance has gotten a bad name because people are not educated on it. They don't have, here's the big thing. They don't know how to properly build policy. That's an absolute big thing. I've got policies that what I do with some of my partners, let's say you've got a $400,000 401k and you want to retire when you're 56 and 65. And so what we do, we take that 401k, you're now 60 years of age, and we'll take that $400,000 and we'll put it into a financial vehicle that you still have the gains of the stock market, but with very little risk. And then we'll take $100,000 of that the first year and fund a policy, life insurance policy. Okay. Now the next year, we'll take another $100,000 from that $400,000, fund the policy again. Do it the third year and do it the fourth year. Now that $400,000 that you've taken, put in that policy to that wealth vehicle is all gone now. It's all in your life insurance policy. But now let's say you are retired 70 instead. From year 6 to year 10, we're going to take $100,000 from our cash value. We're going to borrow that and we're going to put it right back in our policy. Now we have to pay interest on that as an example, 5%. But let's say we got a very conservative investment, such as a preferred stock. You buy from 25, you sell for 25, and possibly get 6.5 to 12.5% return. Oil and gas reserve, it's at 9%. You're paying 5%, and let's say you're only making 8% on your alternative investment. All right, you're making a 3% arbitrage on your money. Think about that. That's huge. Banks do it all the time. They pay you $100,000. You can put $100,000 in. They may pay you 1%. They turn around and deal that money out for mortgages at 5%, cars for 10%, credit cards for 30%. That's the way banks make money. One of the ways.
Yeah.
And that's why I teach people, become your own bank. Borrow money from yourself, pay yourself back.
Yeah. What do you say to people who Do that with HELOC or with an S block, security backed line of credit. It's essentially the same concept, taxable
Right.
perhaps, versus the strategy you just proposed.
It can be taxable. And again, it's properly set up. It might be interest on your house. It's on that HELOC. It could be tax deductible. And it also depends. But here's the other thing too about business owners. They need to structure their business entity and have it looked at every year, whether it's a C corporation, an LLC, S corporation, whatever, because things change all the time. They need to be able to grow with it. Don't get complacent. That's the thing that people understand. Complacency breeds problems. And I'd much rather be proactive than reactive.
Yeah, yep, agreed. Agreed. So getting back to the individual, that most of our audience are professionals, high-tech professionals, consultants, and
Right.
the like. They're used to employer-sponsored retirement plans. That's their knowledge base. They haven't really been informed about life insurance, and if they have, it's primarily term life. What percentage would you say they should allocate to like these tax strategies as well as a whole life policy or an annuity? Let's say they're normally like 30 to 40 years of age. And then I have a follow-up question as well.
First off, they're getting contribution from their employer, put up the match, but no more. Take that money, put to index universal life insurance policy as an example. Okay. And there's no limit to how much you can put into insurance policy. There are limits with the 401k or everything else. The government controls everything.
Correct. Yeah.
If you make too much money, you can't contribute to a Roth.
Right.
So I would contribute up to whatever the company contributes. After that, find a different place for your money.
Got it.
Because again, none of these vehicles are going to allow you to become your own bank. They're not going to mitigate or eliminate the risk of retirement. They're not going to be able to, you're not going to have access to that money. Yeah, that's one of the things I learned. I got access to my money anytime in my life insurance. I use them all the time. But
yeah, and I'm sorry, the follow-up question is, now let's suppose that same individual is thinking about retiring in the next, call it 1 to 5 years. They've reached their fire number, what they think is their fire number, and now they are thinking about maybe integrating some of these strategies into the portfolio. Is there kind of a different mindset or different thinking and positioning that you would recommend how they should integrate these strategies?
like I said before, it's not about rate of return retirement. It's about distribution of assets.
Yeah.
And like the fixed index annuities I talked about, do you realize the older you get, the higher the distribution rate?
Yeah.
When you're 75, I got a one annuity for this lady. She was 67 years old. I got her a 9.3% distribution rate. Guaranteed for the rest of her life.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
So is there a laddering of distribution rates? Like as you grow older, you get higher distribution rates?
Yeah, because that's what happens. When the older you get, the higher the distribution rate. If you want to annuitize the contract at 65, when you're 75, it'll be a higher distribution rate.
And can the distribution rate change as you grow older? Instead of fixing it at a specific rate, can you have it? I guess that would be a variable annuity in some respect.
But I don't deal with variable annuities because of the time of market. But what I do is I call it laddering. All right, we want to take part of this annuity right here. Let's say we got $200,000 as an example. All right, we want to take $50,000 and put it in this annuity. You're going to annuitize it when you're 65. Then we'll take $50,000 and annuitize it when you're 70. And then another one at 75, the other one at 80. Guaranteed income. And like I said, you have all these other options that with increasing income, long-term care, that I included with the annuities that I propose. Because people are not doing it because they just don't know.
No, they know that there's that option. Like I didn't know that there was that laddering option for annuities.
Oh, yeah.
I always thought it was fixed, and then you get $40,000 every year, not even inflation adjusted, which sounds like it's great to have that laddering approach.
The other thing too, John, think about this. We've all been miseducated on annuities, fixed indexed annuity, because everybody says, especially Ken Fisher, annuities, the fees are complicated. It's this and this. The fees are way high. No, they're not high, because If I have an annuity, a fixed or fixed index annuity, majority of them don't even have a fee. But if they do have a fee, it's because of a benefit. I'll give you a perfect example. This is a national company. They provide you with a 40% bonus. You put 100,000, you're immediately worth $140,000. I think the fee on that is 1.5%. But if you don't get the bonus, it's only 20%. You pay no fees. But now you have guaranteed interest, compounds, guaranteed interest of 6%. Compound, it's not compounded annually. It's every year. So, it's got $100,000, you get 8%. Now it's $108,000. You're not paid on 108, you're paid on 100, but you get the 8% every year. And that's guaranteed for 10 years. And in some cases, it goes to 12. It depends on what annuity, because they change all the time. And if you've got an annuity from 10 or 15 years ago, I'd be happy to look at it because there's many options out there for people. One of the things that people say, you don't have any access to your money. You've got access to your money. It depends on what kind of annuity it is. You can have up to 10% with no penalty. And if you do have more than 10%, you want to draw on it, then it's going to be a penalty on that, only over the 10%. But it depends on how long it goes. Some are 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, 12-year annuities. And as the annuity grows, those year periods, you can have access to all that money with no penalty whatsoever.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about insurance, like which insurance carriers and whether that matters? And it sounds like it does because of how much they educate you. Can you talk a little bit about that in terms of what you should be looking for in terms of insurance carriers?
I like to deal with maternal and whole mutual companies. The reason I do that, because they owe their allegiance to the policyholder. Now, stock companies, if you have an insurance company with stock, I'm not saying they're bad, because I have some of my policies with these stock companies, but they owe their allegiance to the stockholders. That's a big difference. Yeah. But you got to look at the rating, and always want to have a strong B+ or above rating at all your insurance carriers.
Could you talk about maybe some common mistakes, red flags that you see people making when they're choosing policies or annuities?
First off, they don't choose the right one. They don't seek a second opinion. I tell people all the time, I've got people all the time, I've already got a financial advisor. You've been with him for 20 or 30 years. I said, okay, that's even more reason to come and talk to him. I said, if that advisor was your doctor, and he said, you need brain surgery, or you say, okay, let's go my brain surgery. No, you're going to consult somebody else. Correct. That's what people need to do. You need to have a second opinion.
I knew about whole life insurance. I knew about annuities, but not a whole lot about annuities. So I think this was really eye-opening for me just to learn a little bit more about it. And I think I didn't mention this, but the infinite banking concept, is that more or less along the lines of what you were proposing? Yeah.
Buy from yourself, pay yourself back.
Yeah.
Because when you pay yourself, let's say I just bought my car, I got my wife a car this last fall, or $50,000 in the policy. Now, if I go into the bank, got 0% interest and $1,000 a month for 50 months, every time I make that $1,000 a month paid out to the bank, that money's gone for me forever. It will never compound for me.
Yeah.
But John, here's the thing you need to understand about cash value life insurance when properly structured. You've got two piles of money. You have your cash value, and let's say it's $100,000, and you have a death benefit that's $1 million. I want to say $500,000. Okay. I borrowed that $50,000 from my cash value. That cash value and $100,000 continues to compound. It does not affect cash value. It only affects the death benefit. You don't even have to pay it back if you don't want to. Now, it does draw interest, but you're at control of how you pay it back. You can pay it monthly, whatever, or you don't have to pay it off at all. It just comes off the death benefit.
And that interest you're paying yourself back. You're basically adding back to your policy. Okay.
But see, when you pay yourself back that $1,000 a month, not only does 100,000 cash value continue to grow, that $1,000 keeps compounding on top. This could be worth tens of thousands of dollars. Like I said, banks do it every day.
And you mentioned it affects your death benefit, but is that only if you do not pay yourself back? If you pay yourself back, does that reduce the death benefit?
Pay yourself back.
You're fine. Yeah. Okay. I see. Perfect. Yeah, this is great information. I've always enjoyed learning about life insurance, whole life insurance. I have a number of colleagues who they are staunch believers of whole life. I just have taken the tact. Again, it's like,
Well, I believe in whole life, John, but I also index universal life. I've got 5 of those index universal life policies because you get a much better gain from the indexing strategy. And I got 3 whole life policies. So you need to compare what you want to do with them to define which one's going to be best for you.
and what's the difference between whole and index then? I know index, as you say,
Well,
you
whole life's got better guarantees. You know what? They have a interest rate that's like 4 to 6% guaranteed.
okay.
We have guaranteed interest rates with indexing also, and maybe 3 or 4%. But what we use is indexing strategies, such as the Barclays Dynamic Balance Index. There's 176 different indices out there that I do know of last year, probably up to 190, if not more, because each insurance company has their own. But this gives you the ability to have never market loss, and you're guaranteed by contract in fixed index annuities, cash value life insurance. You're guaranteed by contract never to have a loss due to market downturn because we're not tied to the market. We use indexing strategy to gain or have our gains in our cash value.
So we're almost at the top of the hour. There's a couple of things that we typically ask our guests. One thing is looking back maybe 20, 30 years at a younger version of Alan Porter, what would you say to the younger version of yourself?
Buy cash value life insurance because there's not a better financial vehicle out there. John, I didn't buy mine until I was 58 years of age. And the only reason I bought it is because of the tragic things that happened to my family. Because I didn't know. Now I have term insurance. That's it. But that all insurance is great because it protects the family. But I'd have bought cash value life insurance. I got cash value life insurance for my granddaughters. And the sooner you get it, the better off you're going to be because the cost of insurance is less.
Right.
And you're healthier. Younger. Now, the only drawback is if you can't afford a premium. But if you've got index universal life policy, then you can adjust it. We can adjust anything because it's universal. But the big thing is a lot of times the people got a bad feeling about insurance because they were quoting anywhere from 8 to 12.5% rates of return. I get anywhere from 6.5 to 7.75% returns on all my policies. And I'm very happy with that because it's less than 0.5% fee as fee for the cost of insurance and things like that. But that cost of insurance, you get so much more. You get anywhere from hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars for pennies on the dollar with that death benefit. Think about paying for long-term care with a stock portfolio. It's dollar for dollar. When you pay for it with your death benefit, you're buying tax-free money for pennies on the dollar to pay for your care.
Oh, that's great. Thank you for that. And thank you for all the information you've imparted, Alan. This is, I think, one of the episodes that people are going to bookmark just because there's just so much content in here. And I think most people have been told certain things about life insurance that you flipped the script on that completely. For everyone who's listening, who wants to explore this further, whether that's custom illustration, maybe something that's customized for their portfolio and their circumstance, how can those individuals reach you and your team?
You can always call me at 910-551-1046. You can email me at strategicwealth, the number 0 at gmail.com. But you can go to my website. You can set a meeting there. And I've got a wealth of information. I got over 500 YouTube videos. They're anywhere from 26 seconds to 18 minutes long. But I've got podcasts in there. I've got YouTube videos. I've got newsletters. I've got it all in that website. The website is www.strategicwealthstrategies.com.
Okay, great. We'll include all that information and Alan's contact in the description for this podcast episode and webinar. So don't forget, so go ahead.
One other thing, I've got a national bestseller out from Amazon. It's called Tax-Free Retirement Solution. Get that book. It's a short read. You probably read it in an hour and a half, but it'll change your life.
That's great. Thanks. We'll link that as well. For our audience, don't forget to like and subscribe on whichever platform you're listening this to. It genuinely helps us bring conversations like this one that's eye-opening. Thanks, everyone. Until next time, keep learning to invest for generational wealth.